Hey everyone, welcome back to Ontario Gardening. In October, we are doing suburban farm to table meals, and I am making them autumn themed. Once a week, we're making stuff. And last week we did apple cider cookies. The week before that, we did pumpkin loaf. It was a Starbucks copycat. This week we are doing pecan cheesecake bars. And although there is an item or two in this mix that I actually purchased to make my life easier, there is opportunity. I have some farm to table stuff in here, but there is some opportunity for even more farm to table if you have more time and resources on your hands than I do. I don't have a cow, but I do have access to some cream and some milk, from a friend, whatever the case may be. Let's make some pecan cheesecake bars. Now these sound intimidating, but they're really not, because there's three parts. You got to do a crust, a cheesecake middle, and then a pecan pie layer on top. It really is not that intimidating once I talk to you through it. So for this recipe, you are going to need 2 cups of crushed graham crackers. So these are purchased, but if you make your own graham crackers, that's a way to make it farm to table. You need some white sugar, 3/4 cups of butter. I've made my own, so there's a way to do that. You're going to need 16 ounces of cream cheese if you make your own. If you buy them in bricks from the store like I did for this recipe, it's 2 bricks. You want that at room temperature. You're going to need 2 large eggs. That's a fairly easy enough staple when you have a Homestead. I've got quail eggs to use for mine. Vanilla extract, I make my own, so you're going to need some of that. Some salt, brown sugar. You can use light or dark corn syrup, whatever you have. I have dark on hand, so that's what I'm using. Heavy cream, if you've got a cow or a goat, some heavy cream, and you need 1/2 cup of that, so you really don't need a whole lot. And then the other thing you're going to need is 2 cups of chopped up pecans. So that's everything you need. I'm going to get into measurements in a second as we go through each layer. When you're talking about equipment, you're going to need a 9x9 pan, some parchment paper if you don't have a super nonstick pan like I do, and you're going to need some sort of blender, magic bullet, or food processor in order to crumble up these graham cracker crumbs. So that's what we're going to do. We're starting with the crust. While we do this crust, we're going to preheat our oven to 350 degrees, and then we're going to line a 9x9 pan with parchment paper. Now, I am not going to do that step because I have these ceramics that are like the most amazing pans that you have. Like, nothing sticks to these ever. I do like literally scallop potatoes in these with no problems. So I'm not going to do the parchment paper, but if you're just using a regular old pan, please put that piece of parchment paper down so that you can lift the bars out at the end. It makes it so much easier. So that's my little tip. So 350 degrees, my pan with the parchment paper if you're doing that, and let's make the crust. Okay, so we're going to start with our food processor, blender, whatever you have, and we're going to do up 2 cups of the crushed graham crackers. You can actually buy graham cracker crumbs. That might make life easier, but we're crushing our own. Now, once you have that, which is about 2 packets of the graham cracker sleeves when you get them in a box. So anyways, we're going to now add a 1/4 cup of white sugar to this. And then we are just going to put this back in the food processor and blend this up until the sugar and the graham crackers are combined as one into fine, like almost flour. As you can see, it's like a fine powder now. And we are going to add 1/2 cup of melted butter into here. And we are then at that point going to set the mixer back on until a nice dough forms. And this is what it looks like when it's about ready to go in the pan. When you pick it up in your hands, and you can do this and see how it like forms, you're good. So we are now going to transfer this to our parchment paper lined pan, and we are going to press it in just like a crust. You can use the back of a spoon for this. I'm using my hand because that's just the easiest for me. And you want that really pressed down in the pan, and you want to make sure it's like pressed down into all of the corners as well. So when we put that cheesecake layer on, it's not going to like seep down. So nice and solid. Now the oven is ready. We're going to put this in the oven at that 350 And we're gonna put that in for 10 minutes to bake this crust and like start the baking. And while we're doing that, we're gonna put the cheesecake layer to work. So now for the cheesecake crust, we've got 2 large eggs in a bowl. It looks like more because I'm using quail eggs. In this, you're gonna add that 16 ounces of cream cheese or 2 bricks. And that's why they need to be at room temperature so that they can mix easier. You want 3/4 cup of white sugar, a teaspoon of vanilla extract, and then just a pinch of salt. And now I'm going to use a hand mixer and mix this all around until it's nice and light and fluffy. You can do this in your standing mixer. I'm just going to use my hand mixer because it's quick. So the one thing to note when you're whipping your cheesecake mixture, even if it's in the mixer, is to make sure to whip it for quite some time. So the recipe says 3 to 4 minutes, and as you're looking for it to be really whipped and nice and formed, because we need to spread this now on top of the crust that just came out of the oven. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, so you're just looking to put this cheesecake layer on top of your crust and even it out the best that you can. That crust is going to be warm, so it is melting this a little bit. I find it easy just to like jiggle this kind of stuff. And just making sure that it's nice and even. Now we are going to put this back into the oven for about 20 to 30 minutes or until this starts to set up really nicely. So I'm going to check it in 20, see where we're at. Likely I'll put it in for 25 just based on my oven. And in the meantime, in about 10 minutes, we'll start working on the top. Okay, so for the third and final layer of this cheesecake bar, we're going to make the pecan pie topping. So we are going to go ahead and add a cup of packed brown sugar to a saucepan. With that, you're looking at 1/2 cup of corn syrup. I'm using the dark. It has a little bit more of that caramel undertone, and that's also what I had on hand, but it worked out perfect. I probably would have picked dark anyways, even if I had to go buy some. And then a teaspoon of vanilla extract, 1/2 cup of heavy cream. So if you're buying that from the store, you're looking for like that 18% whipping cream. And then 1/4 cup of butter. And then the other thing you're going to need on the side is 2 cups, which I've already done here, of chopped pecans, but that's going to be the very last addition to this. Okay, so I got the butter in there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put this on the stove and we're going to put it on a low medium, and we are going to go ahead and get all of this nice and smooth and incorporated it into like a caramel. And you want to make sure that you're stirring that up and incorporating it well so that nothing's getting burned to the bottom of this pan. You don't want your sugars and your corn syrup to burn. So go ahead and stir that constantly until it's all incorporated. Once everything's incorporated and melted in, what you want to do is turn it up just a smidge until you're seeing a simmer within it. And once you're seeing a little bit of a simmer, just let it simmer for just a minute. It doesn't have to be long. It's just really making sure all of those sugars are melted into your mixture here. So see how that's simmering like that? Just do that for a minute. Okay, so it's been a minute. We're gonna take this right off the heat and we're gonna stir in our 2 cups of chopped pecans. And you're wanting to incorporate those all well. Make sure those are all coated and everything is in there really nicely. This is your pecan pie topper. This is the star of the show, really. In the meantime, my timer just went off. The cheesecake, you're gonna wanna test it to see if it's set. Ooh. So basically, when you touch it, it's like firmed up a bit. It's no longer mush. You've set the stage so it's like, I guess, hard enough that you can put over that pecan mixture. Now what I'm going to do is tell you a little secret. If you have a pan that's like mine, it doesn't have a whole lot of top left, you're going to want to put this on top of a baking sheet so that there's no spillage. I actually put parchment paper in between in case there is, because I'm not playing around. It's going to be a sticky mess. And it's as simple now as pouring our pecan pie mixture over top of our cheesecake and making sure that it's nice and smooth and even. And as you can see, that filled mine to the absolute brim. So that's why we want that underneath, just in case it starts bubbling when we cook. And there's a chance. And honestly, that's why like a lot of people put the parchment paper no matter what pan they're using. I'm risking it all today. So we're gonna go ahead and bake this now in that same oven for 40 more minutes. And after this is made, it definitely needs at least 4 hours to cool, and then even refrigeration time after that. So once this is actually cooked and baked, I'm going to set it on the counter for 4 hours and let it cool and set. You could serve it then, but I'm going to take it further and put it in the fridge and leave it overnight, because the cooler, the better, because that's going to harden right up, make the cheesecake cold. You definitely want cold cheesecake. So we're going to bake this for 40 minutes. I'll show you what it looks like, and then we're going to refrigerate it overnight, and I will show you in the morning what it cuts into. Okay, so I put a piece of tin foil over it once it was cool and left it in the fridge overnight. As you can see, it spilled over while it was cooking. That's the importance of using that parchment paper, because this is going to be a nightmare now to get off. But the moral of the story is we're going to cut into it and show you guys. And there you have it, friend. Pecan pie cheesecake bars. As you can see, it did come out of my pan okay. But the parchment paper is really going to help you if you don't have a pan like mine. In fact, I'm going to argue you need the parchment paper. We'll talk to you soon. Enjoy your spooky treat. Bye.